Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome to the next episode of The Healthy Healer. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to a guest that I have been stumbling around with for a couple weeks after we put together all the logistics to make this conversation work. So, this is a person who I put out some feelers out there to look for healers, and I was listed on social media looking for healers who have had wonderful journeys. And Sally Alter was one of the people who responded to that ad. And then we went through a number of changes, and in those interchanges, and there was a number of them, given little logistical issues and technical issues that we got to deal with. I got to know Sally a little bit in her interactive style and who she is for the world and what she's up to and what kind of things have floated her boat and made her heart sing over the years. So, although Sally wasn't sure that she was right for this particular interview, at least at one point, I let her know that she was perfect to be a guest on the Healthy Healer podcast, and invited her in, and she was gracious enough to say that she would do it. So, I'm going to read a little bit about who Sally thinks she is, and by that she provided, and then we're all going to learn who she really is after that. Sally Alter was born in London and has lived in Texas for the past 30 years. She is a registered nurse and writes books on mental health, in particular, 3 books on bipolar disorder. She's a regular contributor on Quora and has answered over 4,500 questions to this date. She has a following of approximately 16,000 people. Sally has traveled to many different countries in the world and spent 5 years traveling around the United States and 6 months traveling around Europe before settling in Texas. She lives with Greta, her cat, and in her spare time find her painting in oils and doing collages. Sally has 5 books, and we're going to talk a little bit about those books. And 3 of them have directly to do with bipolar disorder. There's How to Live with Bipolar Disorder, there's Bipolar 1 Disorder Rescue Plan, and there's the 37 Symptoms of Bipolar Depression. Then she has another book on a practical guide of overcoming loneliness, and then wrote some poetry that she put in a book called We Never Did Mornings. This is where her books are available on Amazon, and we'll get you that link at the end of the show. She also has a website all put together, but it isn't ready to be released until next month. The address to that website will be pretty much www.sallyalterbooks.com. So it's https://sallyalterbooks.com. Also, she's hoping that she can be a part of this conversation and reveal her real self based on the lead questions that I offer her, which I'm glad to do as I am the podcast host for this particular episode, and you all know me as Dr. Fred. I'm the Undoctor. I'm also the founder and creator of Welcome to Humanity and the detector of people who would be really great guests on my show. And I'm here to tell you that Sally Alter is about to be a tremendous guest on this show. So, Sally, welcome to the show.
Wow, that was quite an introduction, Dr. Fred.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here. Sally, one of the things I noticed in our conversations is that although you don't necessarily internally describe yourself as a healer, you are a healer. You're a healer in the way that you live. All the people who know you already know that hanging around with you gives them a sense of their good health. And that's what a healer is. I can tell when you're listening and your interaction style with me on the way here, all the way up to the final hours here while we put together the technical specifics of getting on the show, that you are a healer. You love humanity. You love your friends. There's an opportunity for you to make a real difference in the world. And just by being you, you're a healer. Do you have any comment that you'd like to say about that? I know you have downplayed it a little bit in previous conversations, but I'd like to hear a little bit about how your presence maybe heals the people in your inner circle and the world around you.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, you got this.
Yes. Well, I'm a nurse, of course. That's what I used to do. So I think when you're a nurse, you're always happy to be with people and helping them. And so that's always in my box of tricks.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about your nursing career. How long have you been a nurse?
Okay. I was a nurse for 11 years in England. I first of all trained in Scotland, and I worked in London, and then I worked in Cornwall, which is in England. And then I came to the States, and we did all that traveling, so I couldn't work there. and I haven't done it since.
So all of your nursing work has been in the UK then?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And when did you arrive in the United States?
1989.
1989. So it's been a
Yes,
number of years since you were actually formally doing nursing work.
yes, it has.
Okay. And so as a nurse, was there a specific specialty that you found yourself in more often than not?
Yes, I was in head injury.
Head injury. So
Yes,
like severe brain injuries, et cetera,
right, you got it.
traumatic TBIs, et cetera. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it was terrible.
Okay. And what was terrible about it?
Well, we had a lot of young people there, maybe 13, 14, that were on their bicycles and they didn't have a helmet on. So they'd
Mm,
been knocked off their bicycles and they were paraplegic or they were just hopeless. They couldn't do a thing.
hmm And what did you do as a nurse to sort of help them or help their families or the caregivers along?
Well, it was a big deal with the families because the families used to come in and speak to them all the time. And I opened a organization called Headway, and that was for the families mostly. And it was a monthly meeting in the
hmm
hospital. So
And
they
that
used
was something that you created?
yes,
Oh, so you were quite a leader in that way, quite a front runner. You created an organization to help the families who were devastated by the injury that their children or their loved ones had gone through.
yes, that's right. Yes,
hmm
I was.
What did you find was helpful in that support group? How could being a nurse in that support group actually provide the kind of support that that group was intended to provide?
Well, everybody there knew me because they always used to come into the unit. So they knew my, how I operated. So
And how do I guess I'm asking you to be a little more specific. How do you operate? What can one expect? What could one expect in that support group to know that they were going to get a high value by being there?
well, I knew everybody personally. So I knew their family and their friends and their whole life, really, because they spent so much time in the hospital. So I was
hmm
able to relate to them on a very personal level.
I see. So what was there was the relatability. What was there was you understood what they were going through and you were able to be an excellent listener and have them resonate with you.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, that's part of what we talk about frequently inside of the Healthy Healer is this idea of resonating and connecting with another person is the source of all healing, no matter
Right.
what the condition is,
That's true.
right? And so that's what you were able to naturally provide for the families of these injured head injury clients, head injury
Yes,
patients. Yes.
that's right.
All right. And then have you noticed that after 1989, when you came over here to the United States and did your traveling and, didn't really, not long before you settled in Texas, you have continued to have that level of resonance available to the right people, that you could resonate with people. Yes?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And when you resonate with people, when you resonate with strangers or with people who are not there necessarily with head injuries or even any kind of medical condition, what do you notice happens when you resonate and you connect with another human being?
Well, I think I'm a very good listener. So I allow people to talk and I take an interest in them. So I think that many, many people need to have a good listener in their life. And that's
Right.
what I provide.
Why do people need a good listener? What is the experience that you have that happens when someone is a good listener for another person?
Well, I think that most people want to talk. They've got a need to talk, and not everybody listens to them. So
hmm
I'm one of those people that will help them in that way.
So you can help people actually go through these changes by listening and resonating with them. Yes.
Yes, I bring them out of themselves.
Beautiful.
I've got a skill at that. I can, help anybody.
Say that again.
I've got a particular skill doing that. If I'm talking to anybody, I can listen to what they have to say and take an interest. I'm in tune with that.
So that's really interesting. So not only are you a listener, but I don't know if you even heard yourself just say that part of the listening is actually upon listening, you also take a deep interest in these people.
That's correct. Yes.
Right. Are those things they're mutually related? In other words, is listening and taking, like becoming concerned about people, like, taking care of them, are they
Yes.
related to each other? Can you only listen if in fact you're interested in being concerned about what they have to say?
Well, I think like you said, it's the humanity. If you're interested in helping people, then that's what you do.
Right. So if you take an interest in somebody, then it's easier to listen to them, and if you listen to them, it's easier to take an interest in them. Is that fair to
Yes,
say? Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, that's like a circular relationship that
That's true.
if you're actually interested in someone, it's easy to listen to what it is they have to say.
Yes, that's right.
And then if you listen to them, it's easy to actually hear through curiosity that it's easy to hear how beautiful they are and that you can take interest in their plight in life.
Yes.
That's really fantastic. And of course, that is at the center of what I think healing is about too. That's what
Okay.
Healing the Healer, that's what my course is about. And that's what this podcast is really aimed at. Maybe that's why I recognize you as being an excellent guest.
I was amazed when you said that.
Okay, so one of the things we're going to look at now is what does it really take to, put yourself out there as someone who can be heard, can be a listener. So when you meet someone, let's say you meet someone at a coffee shop or you meet a stranger, these days a little bit harder to meet strangers, right? Ever
Yes,
since
it
the
is.
last few years. You live in Texas. What part of Texas do you live in?
It's called Kerrville, a little town. It's near San Antonio.
Near San Antonio. Okay. Well, I have a daughter who just moved out of Austin, and I have a son who
Oh,
lives in Dallas. So, and
oh, okay.
we were just in Texas earlier this year. I was in Austin earlier this year. So,
Oh,
not so far away from San Antonio after all. Not
no,
so far.
not
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Um, so when you meet a new person, are you rather consistently interested in listening to them, or do you find yourself turning some people off?
I don't know about that really. I think
Well, go
I,
ahead.
I take an interest in most people.
Yes, exactly. I thought that might be your answer. That it almost doesn't matter what their thoughts are on a particular polarizing or divisive issue. You still could be interested in them no matter what they think
Yes,
about something, right?
yes,
If
that's
if
right.
if they disagree with you about global warming or about COVID or about racism or about, Black Lives Matter, that doesn't matter. You could still be interested in them. Is that right?
Yes, yes. I mean, everybody has an opinion.
Right. Everybody has an opinion and you're more interested in their humanity, like what's going on underneath it all.
Sure.
That's beautiful, and it really is the essence of maybe what Florence Nightingale had to say about being a nurse, right? Like the idea of really being present with your clients and present with your patients.
Yes, that sounds fair.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about your ride through. If you don't mind, I'd love to talk a little bit about your ride through what you think has been a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Do you mind if we take that on?
No, that's fine.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about when did the whole notion of bipolar disorder enter your life's work? When did you finally learn something about it or maybe diagnosed with it or whatever happened to you? I don't know that whole story.
Okay. Well, my mother died when I was 15. And then shortly after that, I had my first manic attack.
Hmm,
So that was the beginning of it. But
right. And
I'm
what did that look like?
well, it's embarrassing to say.
Okay.
My, my mother was in the hospital ward and she was dying. And I was excited. Instead of being upset and depressed, I was excited.
Uh-huh.
And that didn't go down very well. I was talking to all the other patients and having a good time because mania, you think you're something else. It gives you a grand view of yourself. So you can get on with anybody and you're excited about life. Mania is really strange.
So you're saying that that was a manic episode because you were excited and you should have been grieving.
Yes, exactly.
I see. So, and who diagnosed you? Are the doctors there, or how does someone decide that you had a mental illness at that point?
Well, I'm going back many years now when it was manic depression before it was bipolar disorder.
Right.
And I spent from 15 till 25 with depression and no mania. So I had that one manic attack. And then ever since then, I had depression And at 25, I started to have mood disorder.
I see.
I went to see a psychiatrist. I went to see my doctor, that's right. And I'd read a book on it, and I said, I think I've got a mood disorder. I said, I've probably got bipolar disorder. And he was quite good. I mean, he listened to me, and he said, okay, let's put you on lithium, because that was the usual medication in those days.
Yeah.
So I took lithium, and I was much better than before, but I had a thyroid condition because of the lithium. So it upset my thyroid, and that's been like that ever since.
I see. So you still have thyroid issues at this point?
Yes, hypothyroidism.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
do you take thyroid medication for that still at this time?
Yes, I have taken it all my life
Okay.
now.
Did you take any medicine between the ages of 15 and 25 when you were depressed?
Yes, antidepressants.
I see. Which ones did you take? Do you remember Elavil, or what was it at that time?
Yes,
Nortriptyline?
way before Elavil, I'm sure.
No, Elavil was in the 50s.
I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, Elavil was amitriptyline was designed in the 1950s, so I don't think it was quite a ways before that. Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you were on some medication, the antidepressants, and you stayed depressed for 10 years after the one manic episode. And then at 25, you maybe had another opportunity to see a psychiatrist and talk to them that you might have a mood disorder. And when explaining your course up until that point, the two of you decided that it was likely a bipolar disorder. And then he started you on lithium, and that got you considerably better for a while. But then there was additional relapses. Is that right?
No, what happened was I got the thyroid condition, so I had to go to hospital. In England, you do go with that kind of thing. And they took me into the psychiatric ward because I was on lithium. And the doctor there examined my thyroid and said, oh, yes, you've got a goiter. So that was the beginning of that. Excuse me, my throat's dry. Hold on, please. Okay. So what happened was I was in the hospital and they took me off lithium. They wanted to see whether I really did have bipolar. And I had another manic attack.
While you were in the hospital?
Yeah, so they really got the message that I did have bipolar.
So that's what the termination at that point, because you had a sense of mania when they took you off lithium, was that this was a relapse of the manic condition and therefore really did represent bipolar disorder or manic depression.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. Mm-hmm.
And are you pretty sure that you did have bipolar disorder, or that could you be convinced in any way, shape, or form that that might not have been manic depression and might not have been bipolar disorder?
Well, my doctor in a different place, I moved a lot, and my doctor where I moved to said, oh my God, you've got a terrible diagnosis to live with all your life. So he didn't believe I was bipolar at all.
What did he believe?
He didn't say, I don't know.
Did he believe that you had a psychiatric condition or not necessarily?
No, he thought I was fine.
I see. Okay. So is it possible that you were fine?
Well, I was pretty well on that lithium for a long time.
Yeah. Is it possible that you were fine even without the lithium?
Without the lithium, no.
Okay. Not possible.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So one of the things we talk about is the possibility that mental illness is primarily just a conversation that's open for transformation. We have experiences like the overexcitability that you had when you were 15, and it's possible that it may or may not represent an actual psychiatric disorder. Now, in your case, you have absolutely you're convinced that you did have bipolar disorder, so much so that you've written a number of books on the condition, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Tell me a little bit about the books.
Okay. I wrote, oh my God, my voice is terrible. Excuse me.
Let's talk about How to Live with Bipolar. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yes, that was my first book. And you mentioned before about me writing for Quora.
Right.
Yes. And when I was writing for Quora, I was writing mostly about bipolar disorder. And I met somebody online and she said to me, why don't you write a book on it? And I never considered that. It didn't occur to me. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll take some of my answers from Quora and put them into a book. So I did 125 questions and answers, and I've got a nice book. Here's my book.
Very interesting. And it's a beautiful cover. And in that book, there's 125 questions and answers about bipolar.
Yes, right.
And that book can still be found on Amazon, right?
Oh, yes, it's doing really well.
Okay, and it's doing well. And what year was that one written?
2021.
Oh, it's only written a couple years ago, and that was your first book. So you've written these 5 books all in the last couple years.
Yes, I was 73 when I first published a book.
Wow, your first book was when you were 73. So all of a sudden you're doing a little bit of math. We can get you're a couple years older than 73.
That's right.
Okay, so that book is doing really well. People write the keyword bipolar. They see the book, they see the cover, they see who you are, and that book has a lot of positive reviews, I suppose. And you're doing well with that book. That's great.
It's got 137 reviews.
137 reviews. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
All right, and now let's talk about your next book then. Is that fair? Can we do that? The Bipolar I Disorder Rescue Plan.
Yes, that's right. Well, I thought, seeing as I'd done the whole of bipolar, I would specialize into bipolar 1 because that's what I have.
Okay.
So I wrote a book from scratch. I didn't use the question and answer method.
Okay.
So I wrote.
What did you write about?
I wrote about bipolar 1, depression, and mania, because in bipolar is bipolar 1 and 2, and bipolar 1 has mania, whereas bipolar 2 has hypomania.
Right.
It's totally different. Hypomania, you can carry on a normal life. You can do very well, in fact. But mania, you're out of control. So it's a totally different thing.
So what does the rescue plan look like when you have bipolar 1?
Well, it's a case of going through all the different symptoms and making them understandable and helping the people understand them and work from there. Okay.
So once people understand the symptoms, how does that translate into being a rescue plan?
Well, it's not actually a 1, 2, 3 rescue, but as I say, it's learning about their symptoms, and I give them the solution to the symptoms.
Okay. All right. And some of the symptoms with bipolar 1 are just flat out mania, right?
Yes, that's right.
And then, so what do you do? What is some of the rescue? Do you have a sample idea of what is some of the rescue plans, how to manage those kind of symptoms when they do occur for someone with that condition?
Well, they have a lot of depression as well, although that's not necessarily the case. You can be bipolar 1 without depression, but most people do have a lot of depression. So
right.
I go into all the symptoms of depression and all the solutions to it.
Right. Okay. So in this case, what is it that, if I was somebody who either was caring for someone with bipolar 1, who had a lot of depression, what would I learn by reading this book?
You'd learn all about their symptoms.
Okay. And the symptoms might be that they're sleeping too much, or they're eating too much, or they're slow in their thinking, or they're crying a lot, or they're worried about suicide, those kinds of things?
You can do the podcast for me.
Right.
Yes, you've really mentioned a lot.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with that condition pretty well.
Good. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, very beautiful. So they would learn all about that and how to manage that.
Yes, that's right. It is for the family as well.
And the family would also learn, and that could be very helpful so that they wouldn't be taken by surprise.
Right. I've got just certain parts of the book, not the whole book, parts of the book from the family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
So they can
very interesting. Okay. And then what are we going to learn in the 37 symptoms of bipolar disorder or bipolar depression?
Bipolar depression. Well, that's really about bipolar depression and not mania. So I've kept it just depression.
Okay.
So it's for people with 1 and 2, bipolar 1 and 2, but only the depression side of things, which is, as you said, you've mentioned a lot of the symptoms. So
right.
I've put the symptoms in book form, and I've given them as, well, I don't know what
Like a list. You've given him a list of the actual symptoms and ways to manage it internally and externally. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
And do
37.
you have a copy of that book with you as well?
Yes. I'm changing
Beautiful.
the cover.
Yeah,
co-
so that's an actual workbook. That's a workbook
Yes,
for
it is.
bipolar 1. That's
Yes, it's a
excellent.
thick book. Yes.
So you can actually do writing into that book. That's a book for
Yes,
an interactive book at some degree.
it is definitely. It's got
Yeah,
checklists, questions and answers. It's got some lots of lined note paper, so you can use it as a journal. So I think
beautiful.
it's a workbook.
That's fantastic. And is it only in hard copy or soft copy on Amazon? Is there such thing as Kindle or Audible or anything like that? Have you created any of those?
Yes, all my books are on Kindle, ebooks, and paperback and hardcover.
Beautiful. And you don't have any Audible books at this point?
Not at this point, no.
All right, good. All right, can we go to your other 2 books at this point? Because those are the 3 books on bipolar. Let's talk about your next book, A Practical Guide to Overcoming Loneliness.
Yes, this is the one.
Oh, that's a great cover as well. And I suspect that you were lonely in your own right, and you're speaking from a point of experience. Is that right?
That's absolutely.
Hmm. And
And
what is? Go ahead.
again, I've taken my questions and answers from Quora, and I've done 101 questions and answers.
I see. So it's a similar guide, the How to Live with Bipolar, with the questions that you had already acquired by answering on Quora. You took another load and put them in a book this time about overcoming loneliness.
I found that works really well. People like that format.
Yeah, that's
So
right. And tell us a little bit about how Quora works. Some of us might be interested in that. So there's questions that are put on Quora, and then you give an answer. Is that how that works? Like you read the
yes,
questions and you
yes.
provide an answer?
The Quora is a question answer website, and it's international. There's millions and millions of people on it, and they give any topic at all. It doesn't matter what it is. You could never think of anything that's not on there. And people write in with their questions, and they're online. And then it says answer, so you give your answer if you can. And there's lots of other people who comment on your answer after that.
And then, so there's a lot of comments on your answer, is what you say, yes?
Yes, that's right.
And so, do you make money on Quora? Is that a possibility, or how does that work?
There is a possibility of that, but I don't do that.
Okay, so you just answer questions, and then once you answer, then people comment on your answer, and you get to learn about the impact of your answer to the question.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that makes sense. And the answers that got positive comments or positive threads after your answers, those are the ones that were qualified to make it into your book, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
All right, makes sense. Beautiful. So along with that, you were also able to write one more book, and it seems like this is your most recent book, the book called We Never Do Mornings.
Yes,
And that's a book of your own personal poetry, yes?
yes, yes.
Another great cover, by the way. Your covers are
Lovely.
fantastic. Yeah.
I've got a really good designer.
Yeah, you really do.
I'm very lucky. Yes, that particular book, I've had poems all my life. I've been writing poetry all my life. And I said, well, may as well put them into a book form and see how it goes. So that's what I did. And it's
Interesting.
going very well.
Yeah, that book is doing well as well.
Yes.
That's fantastic. And when you say doing well, it's making lots of sales. Is that what doing
Yes.
well means? Okay, good.
Yeah.
And do you have an extended family? Do you have brothers and sisters or children in your life?
Well, I've only got one brother, and that's it. My parents are dead, of course, and I don't have any family, no kids.
Okay. So is that where some of your loneliness comes in, would you say?
I think I've always been lonely all my life. And I was an only child because my brothers and sisters were so much older than me.
I see. So you were the last child and almost like an only child because you were so much younger than your family.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And because of that, you had an experience of being the youngest child and the only child, which is a
Yes.
unique experience. And that's probably fueled some of your writing, is being the youngest child and the only child.
Yes.
Interesting. Not so many people have that. That's a good one.
Yes. So loneliness is something that I've always had, but mostly it was since my husband died.
So you were married for a little while, and your husband died how many years ago?
22 years.
22 years ago. Okay. And
Yes.
most of your loneliness was after he died, or were you
Yes.
lonely even when you were married to him?
No, I think after he died.
After he died is when it's got really more pronounced.
Yes. Yes.
Now, does loneliness lead to depression in your view?
Well, this is a difficult thing. It's a moot point because some people say it's a symptom of depression, but I don't really think it's a symptom myself. I think that it's if you're depressed, you can be lonely, but it doesn't mean it's a symptom of depression.
Right. Exactly. That makes sense. Right.
And not everybody's lonely, so it can't apply to everybody.
Yeah. Understood. Now, when you look at Texas versus the UK, is one of those places create more loneliness than the other one?
For me, do you mean?
Like, are you more lonely in Texas? Is one more likely to be lonely in Texas or more lonely in the UK?
I don't know for other people, I'm sure. I was never lonely in the UK.
Never
So
lonely in the UK.
no.
Now, you mentioned you thought you were lonely your whole life, and you did spend some chunk of time in the UK. So even back then, you weren't as lonely in the UK as you are in Texas.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And is the city you live in a rural city outside of San Antonio?
Well, it's not very rural anymore. It's a town of 21,000.
Hmm. That's getting up there in the size, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And
Do
I've
you
been,
make it?
yeah.
Do you make it into San Antonio fairly frequently?
No, I don't do it because the traffic's terrible.
Yeah, the traffic's bad, right? They have the Alamo there and the river, what's it called?
Riverwalk.
The river walk. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
No, I don't go in at all now.
You don't do that. Yeah.
No.
Okay, beautiful.
I
All
used to,
right,
I
go
used to go
ahead.
to the I used to go to the airport a lot because I traveled a lot,
Right.
but now I don't travel anymore.
You don't travel anymore. And is that just over the last few years or has that been for a long time?
It's been a long time now. I was a really big traveler all my life, but I've
Yeah,
not any.
you spent a long time in Europe and all over the US. Would you say that?
Yes, we were in RV and we traveled for 5 years everywhere in the US. And
Wow.
then we went to UK, well, Europe, I should say. And we
And when
spent,
you say we, you're talking about you and your husband primarily?
yes,
And you were the traveling bugs. You had an RV and you just
yes,
kind of went around everywhere in the US.
exactly.
That sounds kind of fun. Did you have a good
Yes,
time
it
with
was.
that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was great fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
All come
All
to
right.
an end now.
Yeah. If you had one thing to say to my listeners, one form of either suggestion or wants or desires for them, or anything about what you know about life as the wise woman that you now are, or anything like that, what would you want to tell the group of listeners so that they should know something that maybe they don't know?
Oh dear, you've got me now. Let's see. Let's think about that.
If you could pass one message to my listeners as a whole, what might that be?
Well, be kind to people.
Be kind to people, right?
Yes, I think kindness is the major thing.
Yeah, being kind to people no matter what they think, right? No
Right.
matter what they
Yes.
think about anything. Yeah,
Yes,
that's a
I think
beautiful one. Like being
very
really
important.
kind, very important. And what
Yes, it
makes
is.
it so important to be kind? Why is that a good idea?
Well, I've had a lot of people being unkind to me, so I know about that.
Right, exactly. Very, very well said. All right, Sally, do you have any questions for me? Anything you're curious about? I hope this interview went pretty well for you. I'd love to hear a little bit if you have a question or comments or ideas that you'd like to share, or a question for me specifically.
Mm,
It's
I
okay
can't.
if no. It's okay if you
No, I
don't.
can't think of anything, Fred.
All right, great. Has this interview gone pretty well for you? Do you feel like we covered things pretty well?
Yes, you have.
All right. Do you feel like I took proper care of you and didn't leave you off on too many tangents, too many
I
hinges?
can, I can recommend you.
All right. Beautiful. I'd appreciate that. So, welcome back to each of the listeners to the Healthy Healer. We've had Sally Alter here just speaking about what it's like to be a healer from inside the business. So, Sally was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at some point in her life and then has done a whole lot to make herself successful by writing books and altering people's lives and by staying kind and wonderful as a listener, as well as carrying on her nurse attitude and being a writer of both prose and of poetry and making a difference in the world. There's very few people who are healing more people than you are, Sally. I just want you to understand that. So
Thank
for the future, I'd like you to consider acknowledging that you're a healer, even when people ask you. So in
you.
some ways, it might even be your primary job is that you are a healer, and you're certainly a wonderful healer to have on our show. And I thank you so much for coming by.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. That's very kind of you.
It's very, very beautiful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being with us on The Healthy Healer. Sally Alter, folks, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. We're about ready to go into the next episode, and we'll catch you on the next flip side. Thank you so much, Sally. We'll catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.